The charred skulls of 1 billion Vorkarians crackled in the atomic fires consuming Vorkar Prime. Their eyes melted and jaws unhinged in a final agonized scream. Humanity's fleets hovered in orbit, raining nuclear destruction on the planet's surface, while dropships disgorged power-armored marines into the rubble-choked streets to hunt down any survivors. Earth had been deceived, and now the Vorkarian Empire paid the price for their treachery. 2 years earlier, Captain Daniel Robinson stood rigidly at attention in the austere courtroom, his dress uniform pressed and medals gleaming under the harsh lights. The battle-hardened Space Marine faced a court-martial for disobeying orders during the disastrous Battle of Proxima Centauri against the ruthless Vorkarians, but Robinson knew the truth behind that bloody debacle. Earth had been played for fools. As the tribunal's members took their seats, Robinson's eyes flicked to the cameras mounted on the walls. Somewhere out there, he knew Prylar, the Vorkarian leader, would be watching. Humanity's weakness sickened the cruel alien, but Robinson would ensure that perceived failing became the Empire's downfall. Earth had blindly swallowed the Vorkarians' lies, manipulated into the role of aggressor, reviled as monsters by the galactic community. The admirals glared at Robinson, their expressions stony. "Captain, you stand accused of cowardice, insubordination, and dereliction of duty. How do you plead?" Robinson stepped forward, his voice unwavering. "I uncovered the truth at Proxima Centauri. The Vorkarians deceived us." He had to convince them. If he failed, humanity would continue stumbling into oblivion, ignorant puppets of Vorkarian machinations. The fate of Earth and the galaxy hung in the balance. Robinson's fingers tapped an impatient rhythm on the sticky bar table. The dim light of the dingy pub couldn't mask the frustration etched into the lines of his face. He checked his watch again, the minutes crawling by, until a figure slid into the booth across from him. Commander Jack Novak, his oldest friend from the academy, now an intelligence officer. "You're late," Robinson grumbled. Novak shrugged. "Had to make sure I wasn't followed. Your message sounded urgent. What's going on?" Robinson leaned in, his voice low. "The Vorkarians. Something's not right. Their story about Proxima Centauri doesn't add up." Novak's brow furrowed. He glanced around the bar before sliding a data chip across the table. "I've been investigating some inconsistencies. Seems our scaly friends have been busy. Found evidence they're supporting rebel groups on our colony worlds, trying to destabilize our control." Robinson plugged the chip into his holodisplay, scanning the data. His jaw clenched as he read the reports. "We have to bring this to the Council. They need to know." The two officers stood before the Earth Alliance Council, the evidence laid out in holographic displays. Robinson watched the councillors' faces, hoping to see the same realization and anger he felt. Instead, he saw hesitation and fear. "This is troubling," Councillor Graves said. "But we can't act without concrete proof. If we accuse the Vorkarians and we're wrong, it could mean war." Robinson slammed his fist on the table. "If we do nothing, we're playing right into their hands." Novak placed a calming hand on his friend's shoulder. "Captain, I may have a solution. A covert mission to infiltrate a Vorkarian communications hub. If we can gather more evidence—" The councillors exchanged uneasy glances. "It's risky," Graves said, "but if you can bring us proof, we'll have no choice but to act." Robinson and Novak left the council chambers, their frustration palpable. "We need a team," Novak said, "people we can trust." Robinson nodded. "I know just the Marines for the job, and I'm sure you have some operatives in mind." They spent the next few days assembling their team, handpicking the best of the best. Marines who had served with Robinson, intelligence agents Novak trusted with his life. They knew the stakes. If they failed, it could mean war with the Vorkarians. As the team gathered in the briefing room, Robinson looked at each face, seeing the determination in their eyes. They knew the risks, but they also knew what was at stake. "All right, listen up," Robinson said, his voice steady. "We have one shot at this. We go in quiet, get the evidence, and get out. The Vorkarians can't know we were there." Novak stepped forward, the holographic display of the communications hub rotating behind him. We'll insert here at the weakest point in their security. Once inside, we'll have to move fast. We don't know how long we'll have before they detect us." Robinson's gaze swept the room. "I won't lie to you, this is dangerous, but if we don't do this, the Vorkarians will keep manipulating us, keep using us as pawns in their game. We have to stop them, for Earth, for the colonies, for every human life they've put at risk. Are you with me?" A chorus of hoo-ah filled the room, the Marines and operatives ready to follow their captain into hell itself. Robinson nodded, a grim smile on his face. "Then let's go kick some Vorkarian ass." The insertion into the Vorkarian communications hub on Zaxos went smoothly. Robinson's team moved with practiced precision, breaching the perimeter and slipping inside undetected. They made their way through the dimly lit corridors, the only sound the soft tread of their boots on the metal floor. Novak took point, his eyes scanning for any sign of trouble. He held up a hand signaling the team to halt as they approached the central control room. Robinson moved up beside him, peering through the doorway. A pair of Vorkarian technicians sat at their stations, oblivious to the danger lurking just outside. With a nod, Robinson and Novak burst into the room, their weapons trained on the startled Vorkarians. "Don't move!" Robinson growled, his finger tense on the trigger. The technicians froze, their scaly hands raised in surrender. Novak moved to the main console, his fingers flying over the keys as he searched for the evidence they needed. Robinson kept his eyes on the prisoners, his jaw clenched tight. "I've got something," Novak said, his voice tense. Robinson glanced at the screen, his eyes widening as he read the data scrolling past. Not only had the Vorkarians been supporting the rebel groups, but they had a far more sinister plan in motion. A bioweapon, designed to target human DNA while leaving their own allies unharmed. The casualty projections were staggering, billions dead, Earth's cities reduced to mass graves. Robinson's grip tightened on his rifle, his knuckles white. "We have to get this back to the Council. Now." Novak nodded, already moving to download the files. But as he reached for his data drive, an alarm blared through the facility. "Shit," he muttered, glancing at Robinson. "We've been made." The sound of boots echoed in the corridor outside, growing louder with each passing second. Robinson motioned to his team, taking up defensive positions around the room. They knew what was coming. Vorkarian Special Forces, the best of the best. The door exploded inward, shards of metal flying through the air. Vorkarian soldiers poured into the room, their weapons spitting fire. Robinson's team returned fire, the air thick with the smell of ozone and burning flesh. Robinson caught a glimpse of the Vorkarian commander through the chaos, Krelok, Pryler's right hand. The cruel enforcer barked orders to his troops, his eyes fixed on Robinson with a look of pure hatred. The battle was brutal and bloody, both sides taking heavy casualties. Robinson watched as his Marines fell, their lives snuffed out in an instant, but they fought on, determined to complete their mission no matter the cost. In the end, it was Novak who made the difference. He grabbed the data drive, the evidence secure, and tossed it to Robinson. "Go!" he yelled, laying down covering fire. "Get that back to the Council!" Robinson hesitated for a split second, reluctant to leave his friend behind, but he knew what was at stake. With a nod, he turned and ran, his team close behind. They fought their way out of the facility, leaving a trail of Vorkarian bodies in their wake. But as they reached their extraction point, Robinson realized the terrible truth. Not everyone had made it out. Several of his team had been captured, left behind in the hands of the enemy. As their ship rocketed away from Zaxos, Robinson clenched his fists, his mind racing. He knew what the Vorkarians would do to his people: torture, interrogation, worse. And he knew that Krelok would stop at nothing to hunt him down, to make him pay for what he had done. But Robinson also knew that the evidence they had gathered was more important than any one life. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and he would do whatever it took to stop the Vorkarians' plan. Even if it meant sacrificing everything. Robinson stormed into the Earth Alliance Council chamber, Novak close on his heels. The councillors turned to face them, their expressions a mix of surprise and concern. Robinson slammed the data drive onto the table, his eyes blazing. "We have proof," he growled. "The Vorkarians have been lying to us from the start. They're behind the rebel attacks on our colonies, and they have a bioweapon that could wipe out billions of our people." The councillors leaned forward, their faces growing pale as they scanned the data on their screens. Gasps and murmurs filled the room as the full extent of the Vorkarian treachery became clear. "This is an act of war," Councillor Graves said, his voice shaking. "We must respond immediately." "Agreed," another councillor chimed in. "We should launch a full-scale assault on Vorkar Prime, wipe them out before they can use this weapon against us." Robinson shook his head. "No, that's exactly what they want. They're trying to provoke us into a war we can't win. We need to be smart about this." Novak stepped forward, his holo display lighting up with a map of Vorkarian space. "We've identified several key military installations and research facilities that are critical to their bioweapon program. If we can take them out with surgical strikes, we can cripple their ability to deploy the weapon without starting an all-out war." The councillors studied the map, their brows furrowed in concentration. Robinson watched them, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that every second they delayed was another second the Vorkarians had to prepare their attack. "Captain Robinson," Councillor Graves said, turning to face him, "you've proven yourself time and again in the field. We're authorizing a limited strike on these targets, and we want you to lead the mission." Robinson nodded, his jaw set with determination. "I'll get it done, sir, whatever it takes." As the councillors began to disperse, a figure in a council aide's uniform stepped forward, his hand reaching into his jacket. Novak's eyes widened, and he lunged forward, tackling the man to the ground. A plasma pistol skittered across the floor, and the aide's face contorted into a snarl. "Vorkarian assassin," Novak spat, yanking the man to his feet. "Probably sent by Krelok to tie up loose ends." Robinson stared down at the assassin, his mind racing. The Vorkarians were growing desperate, willing to strike at the heart of Earth's government to protect their secrets. The stakes had never been higher. "Get him to interrogation," Robinson ordered, his voice cold. "We need to know what else they're planning." As security dragged the assassin away, Robinson turned to Novak, his expression grim. "This is just the beginning," he said. "The Vorkarians won't stop until they've destroyed us. We have to hit them hard and fast before it's too late." Novak nodded, his eyes gleaming with a fierce determination. "We'll make them pay for what they've done, for Earth, for the colonies, for every human life they've put at risk." Robinson clasped his friend's shoulder, a grim smile on his face. "Damn right we will. Let's get to work." The Earth fleet dropped out of warp at the edge of the Xenthos system, the sleek warships gleaming in the light of the distant sun. On the bridge of the flagship, Robinson stood tall, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen. The fortified moon of Xenthos loomed before them, bristling with Vorkarian defenses. "All ships form up and prepare for assault," Robinson ordered, his voice steady. "We hit them hard and fast, no mercy." The crew responded with crisp efficiency, their faces set with grim determination. They knew the stakes. The fate of Earth and every human life hung in the balance. As the fleet approached the moon, Vorkarian ships swarmed out to meet them, their hulls painted with the cruel insignia of the Empire. At their head was Commander Krelok's flagship, a monstrous vessel bristling with weapons. "Evasive maneuvers," Robinson barked as the first volley of plasma fire raked across their shields. "Return fire, all batteries." The space between the two fleets erupted into a maelstrom of destruction, the void lit by the flash of explosions and the glare of energy beams. Robinson's ships took heavy losses, but they fought on with desperate courage, their weapons tearing into the Vorkarian formation. Through the chaos, Robinson spotted an opening in the enemy defenses, a narrow gap that led straight to the moon's surface. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "All marine units prepare for drop," he commanded. "We're going in." Under the cover of the fleet's guns, drop pods rained down onto the moon's surface, disgorging Robinson's elite Marines into the heart of the enemy stronghold. They hit the ground running, their weapons spitting fire as they charged towards the bioweapon labs. The Vorkarians met them with a hail of plasma bolts and the thundering tread of war machines. Automated defense turrets swiveled to track the advancing humans, their guns roaring with lethal precision. Robinson led from the front, his rifle blazing as he cut down Vorkarian after Vorkarian. His Marines followed him into the jaws of hell, their armor scorched and battered, but their spirits unbroken. Through the smoke and the chaos, a figure emerged, Commander Kraylock, his eyes blazing with hate. He charged at Robinson, his plasma blade flashing in the dim light. Robinson met him head-on, his own blade leaping into his hand. They clashed in a whirlwind of strikes and parries, their blades sparking with each brutal impact. Kraylock was fast and strong, his every blow backed by the rage of a warrior born. But Robinson was faster, his every movement honed by a lifetime of training and battle. He ducked and weaved, his blade finding the gaps in Kraylock's defenses. With a final desperate lunge, Robinson drove his blade through Kraylock's chest, the plasma burning through flesh and bone. The Vorkarian commander fell, his eyes wide with shock and pain. Robinson didn't have time to savor the victory. He turned to his Marines, his face grim. "Push forward," he roared. "We have to reach the labs." They fought their way through the twisting corridors of the research facility, their armor dented and scorched, their numbers dwindling with each brutal firefight. But at last, they reached the central chamber, the heart of the Vorkarian bioweapon project. The room was empty, the equipment stripped, and the databanks wiped clean. Robinson's heart sank as he realized the truth. They were too late. The bioweapon was gone, moved to some secret location for deployment against Earth. Desperate, they scoured the facility for any scrap of intel, any clue that might lead them to the weapon. But the Vorkarians were thorough, their secrets well guarded. Alarms blared through the complex, warning of the imminent arrival of Vorkarian reinforcements. Robinson knew they had to move, had to escape before they were overwhelmed. "Fall back," he ordered, his voice raw. "Back to the extraction point." They fought their way out. Each step a battle, each corridor a gauntlet of fire and blood. By the time they reached the waiting dropships, their armor was shattered and their numbers reduced to a handful of survivors. As the ships lifted off, Robinson looked back at the moon's surface, his heart heavy with the weight of their partial success. They had struck a blow against the Vorkarians, but the threat of the bioweapon still loomed over Earth like a sword waiting to fall. The fight was far from over, and Robinson knew that the hardest battles were still to come. Robinson hunched over the console, his eyes scanning the data streaming across the screen. Novak stood beside him, his face grim as he analyzed the intelligence they had managed to extract from Zenthos. The room was silent, save for the hum of the computers and the occasional beep of the sensors. "There," Novak said, pointing to a line of code. "The bioweapon deployment coordinates. It looks like they're planning to launch from a hidden base in the Sigma Draconis asteroid belt." Robinson nodded, his jaw clenched tight. "Makes sense. The asteroids would provide cover from our long-range sensors. But how did they manage to build a base there without us knowing?" Novak shook his head. "I don't know, but that's not all. Look at this." He brought up another file, a series of intercepted communications between Prylar and the leaders of several other alien races. Robinson's eyes widened as he read the messages. Prylar was spinning a tale of human aggression, painting them as a threat to the stability of the galaxy. He was calling for the other races to join him in a preemptive strike against Earth, to put an end to the human menace once and for all. "That lying bastard," Robinson growled. "He's been planning this all along. He's trying to turn the whole galaxy against us." Novak nodded grimly. "And it looks like he's succeeding. The Zorgons, the Creel, even the Vanthari, they've all pledged their support to the Vorkarians if it comes to war." Robinson slammed his fist against the console, his frustration boiling over. "We can't let that happen. We have to stop Prylar before it's too late." The door to the command center slid open, and Councillor Graves strode in, his face lined with worry. "Captain Robinson, we've been monitoring the situation. The Council is divided on how to proceed. Some are arguing for a diplomatic solution, hoping to expose Prylar's lies and turn his allies against him." Robinson shook his head. "With all due respect, Councillor, that's not going to work. Prylar is too smart, too manipulative. He'll twist any evidence we present to suit his own agenda. The only way to stop him is to take out that base and destroy the bioweapon before he can use it against us." Graves hesitated, his eyes searching Robinson's face. "You may be right, Captain, but a direct assault on a Vorkarian base could be seen as an act of war. We could be facing a multi-front conflict, with the Vorkarians and their allies attacking us from all sides." Robinson's jaw tightened. "I know the risks, Councillor, but if we don't act now, we may not have a choice. The Vorkarians will come for us, and they'll bring their new friends with them. We have to strike first, hit them hard and fast before they can mobilize their forces." Graves sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I'll take your recommendation to the Council, Captain, but I can't promise they'll agree. There are those who still hope for a peaceful solution, no matter how unlikely it may seem." Robinson nodded, his eyes hard. "I understand, Councillor, but we don't have the luxury of hope. We have to act, and we have to act now." As Graves left the room, a chime sounded from the console. Robinson frowned, tapping the screen to open the incoming message. His eyes widened as he read the decoded text, his heart pounding in his chest. "It's from Sergeant Hawkins," he said, his voice tight. "One of the men we left behind on Xanthos. He says they're being held at the Sigma Draconis base, and that the Vorkarians are preparing to deploy the bioweapon within the next 48 hours. Novak cursed under his breath. "We have to go after them. We can't leave our people in the hands of those monsters." Robinson nodded, his mind racing. He knew that mounting a rogue rescue mission would be risky, that it could jeopardize any chance of a peaceful resolution with the Vorkarians. But he also knew that he couldn't abandon his men, couldn't let the Vorkarians unleash their weapon of mass destruction on an unsuspecting galaxy. "We're going," he said, his voice firm. "We'll take a small team, infiltrate the base, and rescue our people. And while we're there, we'll do whatever it takes to destroy that bioweapon and send a message to Prylar and his cronies that Earth will not go down without a fight." Novak grinned, his eyes glinting with anticipation. "I'm with you, Captain. Let's show those scaly bastards what happens when they mess with humanity." Robinson clapped his friend on the shoulder, a fierce determination burning in his chest. He knew that the odds were stacked against them, that they were about to embark on a mission that could very well be their last. But he also knew that he had no choice. The fate of Earth, of the entire human race, hung in the balance, and he would do whatever it took to ensure their survival, even if it meant sacrificing his own life in the process. Robinson gathered his team in the hangar bay, the low hum of the stealth ship's engines filling the air. He had handpicked each member for their skills and loyalty, knowing that the mission ahead would test them all to their limits. "Listen up," he said, his voice carrying over the assembled Marines. "We're going in without official sanction. If we fail, there won't be any backup coming to save us. But if we succeed, we could be the only thing standing between Earth and total annihilation." The Marines nodded, their faces set with grim determination. They knew the stakes, and they were ready to lay down their lives for their planet. As the ship slipped out of Earth's orbit, Robinson watched Novak's face on the viewscreen. His friend's expression was tight with worry, but there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I'll do what I can to keep the Council off your back," Novak said. "But you'd better move fast if Prylar deploys that weapon." "He won't," Robinson said, his jaw clenched. "We'll stop him whatever it takes." The journey to Sigma Draconis was tense, the crew working in silent efficiency to prepare for the mission ahead. As they approached the asteroid belt, the ship's sensors lit up with warnings. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple Vorkarian warships and defense platforms surrounding the base," the pilot reported, her voice tight with tension. Robinson leaned forward, studying the tactical display. The Vorkarians had clearly been expecting an attack, and they had marshaled a formidable defense. "We need to get in close," he said, his mind racing. Disguise our ship as one of their supply vessels and use the codes we got from Hawkins to slip past their defenses. The crew worked quickly, altering the ship's transponder signal and broadcasting the stolen codes. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed as though the Vorkarians would see through the ruse. But then the defense platforms stood down, and the ship glided past, undetected. As they landed on the base, Robinson divided his team into two groups. Alpha Team, you're with me. We're going after the bioweapon. Bravo Team, your job is to find our people and get them out safely. The Marines nodded, checking their weapons and equipment. They knew that every second counted, and that the fate of Earth rested on their shoulders. Inside the base, the teams moved swiftly, their weapons at the ready. The Vorkarian soldiers were well-trained and heavily armed, but Robinson's Marines were better. They cut through the enemy lines like a hot knife, their superior training and weaponry giving them the edge. As Alpha Team neared the bioweapon storage facility, a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was Pryler, his eyes glinting with malice. "Captain Robinson," he said, his voice dripping with contempt, "I must admit I'm impressed. I didn't think you'd make it this far." Robinson raised his rifle, his finger hovering over the trigger. "It's over, Pryler. Surrender the bioweapon and we might let you live." Pryler laughed, the sound echoing off the metal walls. "Oh, I'm afraid it's too late for that, Captain. The launch sequence has already begun. In a matter of minutes, the bioweapon will be deployed, and your precious Earth will be nothing more than a graveyard." Robinson felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that Pryler was telling the truth, that they were running out of time, but he also knew that he couldn't let the Vorkarian leader escape, not after everything he had done. He glanced at his team, seeing the determination in their eyes. They were ready to follow him into hell if that's what it took. Robinson turned back to Pryler, his grip tightening on his rifle. "We'll see about that," he said, his voice cold as ice. And then, with a nod to his team, he charged forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Robinson's mind raced as he stared down Pryler, the Vorkarian's words echoing in his ears. The bioweapon was moments away from launching, and Earth's fate hung in the balance. He glanced around the room, desperately searching for a solution, when his eyes landed on the base's control panel. A spark of inspiration ignited in his mind, and he knew what he had to do. "Cover me," Robinson shouted to his team, sprinting towards the control room. Laser fire erupted around him as Pryler's guards opened fire, but Robinson's team was quick to respond. They dove for cover, returning fire with practiced precision. Robinson ducked and weaved through the chaos, his heart pounding in his chest. He could hear the heavy footsteps of Vorkarian soldiers converging on his position, but he couldn't afford to slow down. Every second counted. As he burst into the control room, Robinson found himself face to face with a squad of heavily armed Vorkarians. He reacted on instinct, dropping two of them with quick shots from his rifle, before diving behind a console for cover. "Sarge," he called out, spotting one of his team members taking cover nearby. "I need you to hack into the base's defense systems. We're going to use their own weapons against them." The Marine nodded, his fingers already flying across the keyboard. Robinson provided covering fire, his rifle barking as he kept the Vorkarians at bay. The room shook with the force of the explosions outside, a reminder of the desperate battle being waged. "I'm in!" the Marine shouted, his face lit by the glow of the screen. "Missile systems are online. Where do you want me to aim them?" Robinson gritted his teeth. "Target the bioweapon storage facility. We're going to blow that thing to hell." The Marine hesitated for a split second before nodding. His fingers danced across the keyboard, inputting the new coordinates. Robinson watched the screen, his heart in his throat. The missile launchers swiveled, locking onto their new target. "Fire!" Robinson ordered, his voice cracking with emotion. The Marine hit the launch button, and the base shuddered as a salvo of missiles streaked towards the bioweapon facility. The explosions were deafening, the shockwaves slamming into the control room like a physical blow. Robinson braced himself against the console, watching the screens as the facility disappeared in a blinding flash of light. For a moment there was silence. Then Pryler's enraged voice crackled over the comms. "Kill them!" he screamed, his words dripping with venom. "Kill them all!" Robinson's team regrouped in the corridors, their rescued comrades in tow. They were battered and bloodied, but their eyes shone with determination. They knew that their fight was far from over. As they battled their way back to the hangar bay, the Vorkarian resistance intensified. Soldiers poured in from every direction, their weapons spitting fire. Robinson's team fought with everything they had, but they were badly outnumbered. Suddenly one of the Marines stepped forward, his rifle blazing. "Go," he shouted, his voice filled with grim determination. "I'll hold them off." Robinson opened his mouth to protest, but the Marine cut him off. "Get our people to safety, Captain. I'll buy you the time you need." With a heavy heart, Robinson nodded. He knew that every second counted, and that the Marine's sacrifice would not be in vain. As the rest of the team raced towards the waiting ship, the lone Marine stood his ground, a one-man army against the Vorkarian horde. The ship blasted off from the hangar bay, engines roaring as it clawed for the safety of space. But the Vorkarians were not about to let them escape so easily. A swarm of fighters descended upon them, laser cannons blazing. Robinson threw the ship into a series of evasive maneuvers, his hands flying over the controls. The Marines manned the gun turrets, fighting back with everything they had. But the Vorkarian ships were faster and more maneuverable, and they quickly began to take their toll. Alarms blared in the cockpit as the ship's shields began to fail. Robinson gritted his teeth, knowing that they couldn't hold out much longer. But just as all hope seemed lost, a new voice crackled over the comms. "Captain Robinson, this is the Earth Alliance fleet. We have your back." Robinson's heart soared as a massive fleet of Earth warships dropped out of hyperspace, their weapons already blazing. The Vorkarian fighters scattered, caught off guard by the sudden reinforcements. As Robinson's ship limped towards the safety of the Earth fleet, he couldn't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. They had struck a blow against the Vorkarians and exposed Pryler's lies for all the galaxy to see. But he knew that the battle was far from over and that the road ahead would be long and hard. The destruction of the bioweapon at Sigma Draconis marked a turning point in the war against the Vorkarians. Bolstered by their success and the rallying of other alien races to their cause, the Earth Alliance went on the offensive. They struck at key Vorkarian military targets, crippling supply lines and disrupting communication networks. At the forefront of these daring raids and sabotage missions was Captain Robinson and his team of elite Marines. They infiltrated heavily guarded installations, planted explosives on critical infrastructure, and engaged in fierce firefights with Vorkarian forces. Robinson's tactical brilliance and the bravery of his men became legendary, inspiring hope in the hearts of Earth's allies and sowing fear among their enemies. But the toll of war weighed heavily on Robinson. Each mission, each battle, claimed the lives of friends and comrades. He watched as men he had fought alongside for years fell to Vorkarian blades and blasters. The losses hit him hard, but he shouldered the burden of command, knowing that the fate of Earth and the galaxy rested on his shoulders. As the war reached its climax, intelligence operatives uncovered a disturbing revelation. Pryler, the mad tyrant who had orchestrated the conflict, had retreated to his heavily fortified homeworld. There, he was preparing a last-ditch effort to turn the tide of the war in his favor. The specifics of his plan remained unknown, but the Earth Alliance could not afford to take any chances. Robinson was tasked with leading a massive assault on the Vorkarian homeworld. The Earth Alliance fleet, the largest ever assembled, jumped into the system, facing the full might of the Vorkarian military. Thousands of ships clashed in the skies above the planet, laser cannons and missiles filling the void with deadly light. Robinson's flagship, the EAS Indomitable, spearheaded the attack. It dove into the heart of the Vorkarian defenses, its shields flaring as it absorbed hit after hit. Robinson gritted his teeth as the ship shuddered under the onslaught, but he remained focused on the mission at hand. With the fleet engaging the Vorkarian ships, Robinson led a ground invasion of the planet. Dropships descended through the atmosphere, dodging anti-aircraft fire and unleashing their payload of marines onto the surface. The battle was fierce, with the Vorkarians fighting desperately to defend their homeworld. Robinson and his team pushed forward, engaging in brutal close-quarters combat with Vorkarian soldiers. They fought through the streets of the capital city, blasting their way through barricades and fortified positions. The ground was littered with the bodies of the fallen, both human and Vorkarian. As they neared Pryla's palace, the resistance intensified. Vorkarian guards, armed with advanced weapons and armor, poured out to meet them. Robinson led the charge, his rifle blazing as he cut a path through the enemy ranks. His men followed close behind, their loyalty and determination unwavering. Finally, they breached the palace gates and fought their way inside. The halls were filled with the sound of gunfire and the screams of the dying. Robinson and his team battled through the last of Pryla's defenses, until they stood face to face with the mad tyrant himself. Pryla was a formidable opponent, his skills honed by a lifetime of war and conquest. He engaged Robinson in hand-to-hand combat, their blades clashing in a deadly dance. The fight was brutal, with both men giving and receiving wounds, but in the end, Robinson's determination and skill proved too much for Pryla. With a final desperate thrust of his blade, Robinson struck Pryla down. The tyrant fell, his reign of terror finally at an end, but Robinson had not emerged unscathed. He collapsed to the ground, his lifeblood pouring from a mortal wound. As he lay dying, Robinson's thoughts turned to Earth and the countless lives he had fought to protect. He knew that his sacrifice had not been in vain, that he had saved the galaxy from Pryla's tyranny, but he also realized that the cost of victory had been high. The war had left the galaxy in ruins, with billions dead and entire worlds devastated. The scars of the conflict would linger for generations, the wounds not easily healed, but Robinson's sacrifice would become a symbol of Earth's resolve and the price of freedom. With his last breath, Robinson whispered a prayer for the future, hoping that the hard-won peace would endure. Then he closed his eyes and slipped away, his duty fulfilled at last. The Earth Alliance had emerged victorious, but it was a bittersweet victory. The road to recovery would be long and difficult, with many challenges yet to come, but Robinson's legacy would live on, a reminder of the courage and sacrifice needed to defend what is right, no matter the odds. The galaxy lay in ruins, a shattered remnant of its former self. The war against the Vorkarians had exacted a heavy toll on all sides, leaving behind a legacy of destruction and loss. The Earth Alliance, victorious but battered, sought to rebuild from the ashes and forge a new path forward. Commander Jack Novak stood on the bridge of the EA's Phoenix, his gaze fixed on the holographic display before him. The ship was part of a massive reconstruction effort, tasked with delivering supplies and aid to the war-torn worlds of the Alliance. "Status report," Novak barked, his voice cutting through the low hum of the bridge. "Control systems nominal, sir," the helmsman replied. "We're on course for the Centauri system, ETA 3 hours. Novak nodded, his expression grim. The Centauri system had been one of the hardest hit during the war, its once thriving colonies reduced to rubble. The Alliance had pledged to help rebuild, but the task was daunting. As the Phoenix navigated the stars, Novak's thoughts turned to the challenges that lay ahead. The war may have been won, but the peace was fragile. Many of the alien races that had fought alongside the Vorkarians harbored deep resentment towards Earth, blaming them for the destruction wrought upon their worlds. Suddenly the comm system crackled to life. "Commander Novak, we have an urgent message from Earth Command." Novak frowned. "Put it through." The holographic display shimmered, and the face of Admiral Jenna Carl appeared. Her expression was grave, her eyes shadowed with worry. "Jack," she said, her voice tight, "we have a situation." Novak leaned forward, his heart pounding. "What is it, Admiral?" "We've received reports of a new threat emerging from the remnants of the Vorkarian Empire. A figure calling themselves the heir of Pryla has been gathering the scattered Vorkarian forces and other disaffected races. They're promising to restore the Empire to its former glory and exact revenge on Earth. Novak's blood ran cold. The spectre of Pryla, the mad tyrant who had plunged the galaxy into war, still haunted the minds of many. The thought of his legacy living on was chilling. "What do we know about this heir?" Novak asked, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his gut. Admiral Karl shook her head. "Not much. They've been operating in the shadows, striking at our allies and sabotaging our reconstruction efforts. We've lost contact with several key outposts in the Outer Rim." Novak's mind raced. The Alliance was still reeling from the war, its forces stretched thin. If this new threat was allowed to grow unchecked, it could undo everything they had fought for. "I'll divert the Phoenix to investigate," Novak said, his jaw set with determination. "We'll get to the bottom of this." Admiral Karl nodded. "I'm sending you all the intelligence we have, but Jack, be careful. We can't afford another war, not now." The transmission ended and Novak turned to his crew. "Set a course for the Outer Rim. We have a new mission." As the Phoenix charted a new path through the stars, Novak couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled over him. The ghost of Daniel Robinson, the hero who had sacrificed everything to defeat Pryla, seemed to loom large in his mind. Novak had known Robinson, had fought alongside him in the war. The man had been a legend, a beacon of hope in the darkest of times. But now, with this new threat rising from the ashes of their victory, Novak couldn't help but wonder if Robinson's sacrifice had been in vain. He pushed the thought aside, his resolve hardening. Robinson had given his life to save the galaxy from tyranny. Novak would be damned if he let that sacrifice be for nothing. As the Phoenix ventured into the unknown, Novak steeled himself for the challenges ahead. The heir of Pryla may have caught them off guard, but the Earth Alliance would not go down without a fight. They had beaten Pryla before, and they would do so again, no matter the cost. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and Jack Novak would stop at nothing to defend it. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.